Welcome to Crossing the Streams. I am not MoreAmor, your host. I am another host, Zach Rutledge, along with our co-host, Brandon Rutledge. And yes, Mr. MoreAmor is here. Welcome in, MoreAmor. This was the only way I could think that we could interview you for your own show, unless some like weird, like multiverse kind of thing like transpired here. I didn't know a better way to do this. So it's going to feel a little different. It's going to feel a little odd. Just go with it. And as we like to say, pivot. Okay. Just don't worry about pivoting. Okay. Change is good. It'll all make sense in the end. So without further ado, let's get into this. Today is actually really, really special because we are joined by a very, very special guest, Mr. MoreAmor. MoreAmor is here. Everybody, welcome.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate this. I'm doing great. How are you guys?
We are absolutely spectacular. Thank you so much for giving us a little bit of time today. We really do appreciate it. I know you're a busy man and high in demand because he is such an amazing human being. So we appreciate Mr. Amor by providing us a little bit of his time. MoreAmor, you guys, from the great realm of Twitch and an amazing podcast, the Crossing the Streams podcast. So excited to actually get this thing done. An amazing collaboration between the RutPOP Podcast and the Crossing the Streams podcast. And the reason that I really wanted to do this with Amor is because his community has been pleading with him to be interviewed himself on his podcast. So I'm very thankful that we're going to have this opportunity to get to know MoreAmor here on the RutPOP podcast and the Crossing the Streams podcast. I'm super duper excited about this. And just so everybody is aware in chat, all of the alerts and everything are turned off for the duration of this podcast to allow ourselves and our guest ample opportunity to respond to questions and continue down an amazing path of conversation as we move along. Are you ready for this, Amor? I mean, you're not normally in the hot seat. You're normally, the one, delivering all of the tough questions.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be weird for me, but I think I'm ready as one can be for this sort of thing. So my answer is maybe. Maybe I'm ready. I don't know. We should be good.
How the turntables have turned.
The turntables have turned. So what is it?
How the turns have tabled.
How the turns have tabled.
Is it a pun?
It's a joke.
An inside joke?
No, it's actually an outside joke because I think it came from The Office.
It feels like an Office.
It feels like a Michael Scott kind of joke, right?
I have no idea. I am not an Office
that's right.
person.
He's not an Office person. That's right.
Oh man, come on.
I know.
Yeah, never got into it. Never could.
It's just sad.
I'm okay with
Parks and Rec, maybe.
No, he didn't like the idea of that style of show. So, which I'm assuming like Modern Family, is a big no because of the interview style and
exactly
all that stuff.
Exactly. Don't like the format.
No.
Yeah, I love mockumentary films, but the mockumentary ongoing series just doesn't make sense to me. Like it makes sense to do it as like a documentary, like like an hour and a half, 2 hour long, fake documentary. But to have like an ongoing series that never ends, like the way The Office just kept going, it's like, really, is a paper company that interesting? Come on.
Look, we can go down this path, but like they even acknowledge that in that show. Like, why? Yeah. Like literally, there's literally a line in one of the later seasons like, don't you guys have enough at this point? Like, it's only a paper company. Like, I love that. I love that they recognize that exact fact, and they're like, this is not like this shouldn't be interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Parks and Rec, I get. Parks and Rec was one of those ones like they basically stole the format. It didn't make any sense for them to be having these aside interviews and confessionals and things like that, because they never acknowledged what they were doing or why. At least with The Office, they acknowledge we're making a documentary on this paper company. Like that I got. But to take that style and apply it to Modern Family, apply it to Parks and Rec, yeah, okay, I'll give you that. Even though I still think they're funny and entertaining, whatever. But I get it. I get your point. But
I never got into the reality television craze either. I'm not a big fan of reality shows, and those seem too much like reality shows to me. And yeah, just annoys the heck out of me.
Well, we say it all the time, Amor. Everyone is entitled to their own opinions, no matter how crazy they might be.
Yeah.
Prime example.
People can be wrong. It's okay.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine to be wrong. Like it's okay to be wrong every once in a while. But whatever.
I make a lot of mistakes.
I joke. I kid.
Mistakes are a much better teacher than I am.
And I see already in chat we have some mods already pumping Mr. Amor out there. So make sure again, if you guys are not already, as I like to say, tickling MoreAmor's heart with that mouse, with that clicker of yours, please do so tonight. Give Mr. MoreAmor a follow. Great content that he's producing outside of even the podcast, the Crossing the Streams podcast. So let's start there, where Amor loves to start all of his interviews. Describe your Twitch channel.
All right. Well, my Twitch channel is primarily Lego building, although it's had a long storied history of being a game channel. But it is currently a Lego-oriented stream. You'll often find me either in makers and crafting, art, or just chatting, depending on kind of the theme of what I'm building. But it's often Lego builds. But I guess my claim to fame now is Crossing the Streams, where I've taken this focus of the brick building community on Twitch and have put a spotlight on a lot of the other creators within that space, where I sit down with them hour and a half. We talk about their history of Lego, their history of Twitch, their thoughts on the brick building community, their thoughts on Lego, and what has really made them both what they would consider successful, but also what motivates them and inspires them to continue to create content on this platform or whatever platforms that they're currently making things for. And that's the shtick.
Why did you choose to go down that path? Why, jump out of doing the Lego building or the video game playing or any of that stuff? Why go into that format? How did you slip into that?
Well, I've always had a lot of interest in other creators, mostly initially out of just trying to learn how to stream. I think there's a lot of streamers out there who will admittedly say, I went on YouTube and I did some searches, or I went on Google and I was like trying to figure out how to be a better streamer or how to be successful at streaming. So I, like many others, started looking at those pieces of content, whether they are YouTube videos or, social media accounts of people who are successful at streaming. And so early on, I started consuming a lot of that stuff, whether it was, people like Harris Heller, who is known as Alpha Gaming as well, posts a ton of information on how to create content. Loco, who is a incredibly popular Twitch streamer, just consuming that content a lot. And as I started to learn more, I realized, there's kind of this roadmap that a lot of these same people follow. There's a lot of tips and advice that you will get. A lot of it starts to sound the same if you've watched enough of it. And I was like, okay, I got it after consuming a lot of it. But as you probably know and have seen, there's literally millions of people streaming on Twitch right this second, right? There's millions of people who create content, whether it's Twitch, whether it's YouTube. And we only know of maybe the top 1% of those people, if that, right? You actually kind of see the same names. And admittedly, I was like, well, if there's millions of us, but we only maybe know less than 1% of those. Clearly, those people are doing something different. Clearly, those people are doing something interesting. And like anything in this industry or this section of the internet, you find that even though you could follow all this advice that's out there, but what's truly compelling and what really draws me to particular creators is their story, right? Whether it's, how they got to where they are, or what they talk about when they're streaming, the things that interest them, the things that make them different, which is really what all of us creators should be focused on. And joining the Lego and brick building community has really magnified that for me, right? Because it's a much smaller sample of the Twitch space. It's like much smaller. And what really came across to me as I got to know a lot of you out there is a lot of you have interesting stories. A lot of you have some really cool things about you. And there's, as someone who's looked very closely at Twitch streamers, YouTubers, and things like that, I found that everyone has had a different path. Everyone has had something. I mean, it's just like people in general, right? Everyone has a wonderful story to tell. And I felt like this was a wonderful opportunity to dive deeper and look closely at everyone's story and talk about it and put those people, all those creators, in a place, in a space where they could share their story or talk shop or talk about the things that inspire them to continue to stream or build Lego or make videos, because it just seemed like the thing to do. It felt like there wasn't really a space for that, right? And so, I mean, on the greater Twitch sphere, you see that all the time. You see a lot of high profile streamers being interviewed on different podcasts, like, just like crossing the streams. But this felt like a really good opportunity to put brick builders, Lego creators, and people adjacent to that community in the spotlight.
What's surprised you the most from the conversations that you've had? I mean, how many you've gone through? Is it 12 or is it more than that at this point?
We wrapped up episode 21.
Oh my God. Look at you, dude. Holy cow.
How long have you been doing that?
Once a week.
Yeah, it's
21
weekly.
Weeks.
Wow, dude.
Wow.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
20.
Actually haven't taken a break. 21 weeks. Episode 22 is tomorrow. So, yeah.
Wow. That's awesome.
So
it just feels like it just started. Like, it's amazing to think that that's been for 21 weeks. Like, that's bananas.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to know a little bit about his story. He's clearly interested in other people's stories, but I'd like to know a little bit about your story.
Yeah, I mean, well, let's why not? Let's actually real quick. I wanted to go back to my question. Can you what's surprised you the most out of all the 21 guests that you've had? What's been the most surprising thing that you've heard somebody tell you about their Twitch journey or whatever it may be, right?
Yeah. About the Twitch journey, I think the most compelling one to me was Brick and Nick, in that he was one of the first. Him and Set to Build both kind of appeared actually right around the same time. Both of their stories are really interesting to me, in that they had hardly ever seen it ever out there, and both of them are huge Lego fans, right? They're big AFOLs. They love brick building. And they both saw an opportunity in the same like window of time, even, that, hey, no one's really doing this. And they both got started. I think like Brick and Nick started, and then like within a couple months Set to Build. So I mean, I know that's not as crazy, but what's really interesting was there was literally a time that you could point at and say this never existed on Twitch on the level that it does now. And I mean, I know it's still a small space, but
right.
Yeah.
Right, because you knew you're one of the OGs on Twitch, not necessarily OG in the brick building community, but OG on Twitch, all the way back to when Twitch was a different name and all that, right? You were involved with all of that stuff. So let's go back in time and
flashback, right?
Flashback, and let's talk a little bit about your history. Your story that led up to your introduction of was Justin TV, right? Is that what it was called before?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's
Justin.tv.
Justin.tv. So let's start with Amor, the toddler years. No, I'm just kidding.
The baby streamer.
Yeah. But where, like, okay, so let's talk a little bit about who you are and what you do currently. What's your profession? What's your day job?
Sure. By day, I am a senior game designer for a company called Pipeworks Studios in the Pacific Northwest. We have worked on many games since 1999, actually. So we're about 22, 23 years old as a company. I joined them in 2011, which actually coincides with some of my Twitch journey, which I can touch upon
I'm
later,
starting to see a connection here. Yeah.
Right. So games industry, which is like a big connection there. So by day, I'm a senior game designer. We worked on games that a lot of you guys might have heard of. We have a team that works on Madden, on the Madden series. We have a team that brought Terraria from PC to all of the different consoles, all the main ones that exist right now.
You're like a superhero to my son, by the way, just so you know.
Oh, well.
I told him once, I was like, I know a dude that worked on Terraria, and his eyes got about this freaking big. He's like,
yeah.
What?
I admit I was not on that team, but it was happening all around me. I'd look over, there's Terraria.
Well, don't tell him that. We'll just keep it as if you worked on it and like you freaking came up with the concept. And we're going to make him feel like you're a freaking like rock star in the Terraria world.
That is rock star. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've worked on a number of other titles. I'm currently working on a title called Magic Spellslingers, which is an offshoot of Magic the Gathering, which is purely this game is a purely digital version of a collectible card game designed from the ground up using a lot of Magic the Gathering's lore, as well as characters and a lot of the concepts that are similar to the main game. This is an offshoot designed specifically for mobile and PC and all those different places, which has been the project I've been on for the last 3 years. So, but I've been in the games industry for about 11 years. Making games, working as a designer, and just learning a lot about how to make games and trying to make some incredibly fun ones as I go.
Are you allowed to say what company you work for? What game design company?
Pipeworks.
Pipeworks. Gotcha.
Pipeworks Studios. Yeah. So we're known. Our early claim to fame was a bunch of Godzilla games in the 90s. A lot of people played those and loved them, and then from there we've just taken on a lot of different IPs and properties that are just incredible to see and work on. So and like I said, I'm currently working on Magic. We got some other cool stuff. Actually, we just announced later this month we have a Walking Dead game coming out.
Nice.
Very, very soon. And so yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of things.
What led you to that? So let's go Amor toddler years. Like, at what point did you say I want to get, involved in video game design? There's always a catalyst around a decision, for anybody's career. You would typically think. What was yours?
This is one of those times where I would say it's almost a retcon in a way, when you think about stories and you look back and you're like, oh, this is actually the moment. So in my adult life, I never thought that game design or game development was something anyone could get into. I don't know why, because obviously I've been playing video games since I was like 6 years old. It never occurred to me that I could just do that as a profession. So, I'm out of college, didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I had a bachelor's of science degree in applied psychology with a focus on industrial psych. I didn't know what I really wanted to do. I thought I wanted to do something in industrial psych, which is to say, whether it was either, research for companies and corporations or working more on the people side of bigger companies and kind of helping them learn how to work with their people better. I was floating around, didn't know what I wanted to do, landed in a crappy job in retail because I couldn't figure out what I wanted. Worked my way up from working a register at an electronics retail store to being a supervisor on the fast track to manager, and realized this is not what I want to do with my life.
Don't blame you. Don't blame you.
And so a good friend, actually my wife's best friend, was married to an artist actually at Pipeworks Studios. I've been there my entire career.
Oh, wow.
Not,
Okay.
which is insane, insane for games.
Yeah.
Working at the same company for even more than a couple of years. He was an artist. He was one of their more senior artists, and we've been hanging out a bunch of times, because, our wives are best friends. And one day he's like, dude, I see all your games. I see your D&D stuff. It was very clear. I was super into video games. I super into D&D and all that stuff. He's like, tell me about that stuff. Tell me what you do. And I just went through oh yeah, I've been playing D&D for years at that point, for a decade at that point. I've been running my own games. I was telling him that, he's like, do you run the adventures or do you run your own stuff? I was like, I do a little bit of both. I run my own stuff and I show my drawings of dungeons and maps and things like that. And I started asking him about his work, and he told me a little bit about it. And then it got to this point where we got to know each other really well. And over a little time, he's like, why aren't you just making games? Because you make you're running your own D&D, your own D&D campaigns. You're modding video games, which was something that I was doing. I was modding video games. I was just coming up with stupid stuff in my free time. He's like, why don't you just design games? I'm like, why would I do that? Because I didn't know. I was like, dude, I couldn't make I was dumb enough to not make the connection that I could have just done it.
Right.
He's like, I bet you could be a designer. He's like, do you like doing this stuff? Do you like making up games? I was like, I love making up stuff or changing games. He's like, we need an intern. I'm like, okay, an intern. And he goes, all right, well, if you want to do it, let me know, and I'll put you in touch with the design director at Pipeworks. I'm like, sure, whatever. And then I thought about it, told my wife. My wife is the most wonderful, encouraging person ever. She is the first person that will say, if you are not happy with your life, then what are you going to do to fix it? And, she historically has inspired me to do many things I didn't think I could do. I mean, she has her whole own story, but that said, she basically said, if you're not happy doing what you're doing and you love video games, because clearly you do, why don't you go try for this? And so I got in contact with them over there. Their design director was like, well, we're looking for an intern. I just want to make that clear. I'm like, yep. And I'm like, here I am, mid-20s. I was like, am I about to try to take an internship in video games? And
what were you doing? What were you doing when this whole thing, this was the real, not realtor, I got the name wrong. The sales associate type of.
Yeah, I was a supervisor at a Best Buy.
Okay, so this is Best Buy career or whatever. So you're going to leave potentially a massive, or not massive, but a steady paycheck job to go be an intern.
Yep, I had a steady job. I had benefits. I had insurance. I had, retirement. I just got retirement because I was at that point in the company where I could do all that. I was perfectly stable, and my wife was working, and we're like, okay, we're set up, and we just had a kid too. And so it was one of those moments where I was like, am I ready to take an internship where I might not be guaranteed anything? Because they could just cut me loose if they didn't like me. And so my wife's like, well, why don't we sort that out afterwards? And why don't you just try for it? I'm like, you're killing me, but sure, I'll do this. And so I reached out to them. They sent me a 10-page design test.
Right.
A 10-page design test. There'd be wait,
is this the draw the turtle on the?
It was
you know what I'm talking about, right? The sign. You can be an artist too. The Art Institute of whatever.
No.
Do you remember these infomercials?
Yeah.
Okay. I remember these.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Draw this picture and
Draw
mail,
this
mail
picture,
it to
mail
us.
it back, yeah, and then we'll let you know if you have what it takes to be an artist.
It was full of logic puzzles. It was full of where there were very discrete answers that you had to get correct based on logic. But then there were also things that were completely creative and obscure, and there was no clear right answer in some of these questions in terms of interpret this piece of this shot in the game. What do you think's going on here, and why do you think they made the choices they made?
Oh my god, it sounds like film class.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
So I spent like a week and a half on it straight. Like every evening, I spent a couple hours on it, and I was like, "There's no way." And I was like, for an internship, and so I was like, okay. I filled it out. I worked on it, and I emailed it back to their director, and I didn't hear anything for like a good month, and I finally reached out to my friend who even got me the connection. And he's like, oh, hey, sorry, we've been super busy. He's like, but we'll you'll hear from him in a couple days. And a couple days later, I got a phone call, and it was like a phone interview. And they were like, okay, well, we were really pleased with your test. Would you like to come over to the office and do like a day-long interview? I'm like, a day-long interview? Like
for an
literally
internship? What in the world?
Yeah. And so, well, at the time, and this was going on behind the scenes, they weren't sure what they wanted at the time. I learned this later. They thought maybe an internship, but then it looked more like an associate position as time went on. And basically, after a day-long interview where I met a bunch of people, talked to a bunch of different people at the studio, they finally did make me a job offer, and they said, yeah, we're not going to offer you an internship. We're going to offer you an associate design position with this company.
I would think so. I mean, that's a heck of a test. You heard that they initially went into it thinking internship, or did they spew you that line to get?
They weren't sure at the time. It was more like associate. They're like, maybe it's an associate. At worst, it's an internship.
Gotcha.
And so, they offered me a full-time position. That it was spring 2011. Got hired in like April that year.
I'm sorry. This is just like the coolest story I've ever heard. No.
So yeah, I got the offer in the parking lot of Best Buy that I was working at. I was sitting in my car, got a phone call. I was literally getting ready to show up for my shift to be do the supervisor, run the sales floor for the day. I'm like drinking my coffee, eating a bagel, and my phone rings, and I'm sitting in my car, and I'm like, oh, okay. Hello? And they're like, hey, Amor, it's so-and-so from Pipeworks. I'm like, yeah, what's going on? And they're like, hey, look, we'd love to make you an offer. And I'm like sitting there, bagel in my hand, like, yeah, what are we doing? Like, tell me what I need to do.
Please do not kill my imagery of this, Amor. I'm picturing you now getting out of your car with that coffee, walking into the store, taking off your shirt as soon as you walk in the door, throwing it at the doorman, taking your coffee, dumping it on the floor, and throwing up the deuces and walking out. Please tell me that's what you did.
It
wasn't what he did.
It wasn't what he did. But what happened was I did roll in. I spotted the main manager. I'm like, yo, can I talk to you for like 5 minutes? And he's like, why are you asking me to talk? I was like, 5 minutes, man. Just I need to tell you something. He's like, all right.
Already.
and so we went in the back office. I was like, yo, I'm taking an offer at a game company, and this is my 2 weeks.
Man, you even gave him 2 weeks. You're a much better person than I am.
Well, the thing is, I wasn't living in the same town at the time, so I had to figure out moving. So I was even then I was like, I gotta thank you for everything, but I'm out. I'm gone.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, he's like, crap. Okay, yeah, sure. This is unexpected. This is not what I expected to hear today. I was like, me neither.
So yeah, the coolest part of this story for me is your friend and your wife for encouraging you. I'd like for you to give them a shout out. Who are these people? Tell them about your friend and your wife.
Yeah. So my wife, Sarah, thank you so much, honey, for being so wonderful about understanding, that if you see an opportunity for something better, you should take it. And Bobby, who was the art, one of the artists at Pipeworks at the time, he recognized that was something I was capable of doing and made the recommendation. So, yeah.
I mean,
I worked with him for a couple of years until he moved on to a different company. But yeah,
nice.
This I didn't have the coolness of going to work at a designing video games for the rest of my life, but I mean, this is literally my journey, or was my journey, which we talked about on your Crossing the Streams episode, where I left what at the time was actually a really good paying career, and went and took an internship with a video production department at the Indianapolis CVB, because that's what I wanted to do. It was follow your passion. I'm going to go from making whatever I was making at the time there to making nothing, because it wasn't as cool as you, where it was we're going to put you through the ringer and then give you actually a real job. It was, oh no, you are going to be an intern. Like, that's what it was as a grown adult. Like, you're going to go be an intern, and I sucked it up and did it. And boy, sometimes that's what it takes. Sometimes it just takes that courage to follow your passion, to hit your goals that you really want to hit. That's awesome.
Yeah. It was a turning point for me, because when I did all the day long or the 10-page test and the day long interview, I really realized that this was something that, whether or not it was in reach, that I was going to figure out what I needed to do to get there. And so, my wife and I had very serious conversations at the time of, well, if this opportunity does not work out, what do I need to do to make myself ready for another opportunity?
Right.
And so at that time I was looking at like game design programs that some places would do. I was looking at, a couple different, like in the Art Institute, or I was looking at, a couple of universities that offered game design programs. So I was thinking that if I couldn't do it here, I would have to figure out how to make it happen.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. You've made the move mentally into that type of career, regardless if it's with Pipeworks or whoever. Like, that's where you are now, just mentally and in your heart. I'm going to go that route, and that makes a lot of sense. And again, that's a lot of courage to say, if this doesn't work out, I'm still, like, I'm in it. I'm in it regardless. If it doesn't work out here, I'm going to figure out a way to make it work, kind of thing. That's really cool. What was the game for you as a kid that you even today find yourself looking back on as inspiration for designing or coming up with interesting content for games? What was that game for you that really sticks with you even today?
I said earlier, I hinted at it. Like, you know how like when I look at my history, I could almost retcon it. Let me explain why. When I was about 7 years old, one of my dad's good friends had an NES. We didn't have one yet, and when my dad and his buddy would hang out and watch sports, I'd go over to his buddy's house with them. They'd hang out, they'd talk. And they had like a little side room where they had another TV, and they had an NES. And his buddy was like, "Hey, I'm gonna," like, he asked my dad, "It's cool if I just let him play video games?" My dad's like, "Yeah, sure." And I was like, "Yeah, let's do this." As a kid, he put me on an NES, and he put me in Legend of Zelda. And I got obsessed with that game. I really did, to the point where, I played it a couple times, or like at at his house while my dad and him were like watching, sports in the living room. And my dad got the hint, right? So he got me an NES for my birthday, which wasn't long after that. And his buddy gave me his copy of Legend of Zelda. It was the gold cartridge like copy of that game. He's like, hey, like, you've been playing it, you clearly love it. Here you go. I've already beaten it. I've enjoyed it. I feel like you'd really enjoy this. It was great. Thank you, Mr. B. Appreciate it. And I became obsessed with it. Beat the game, but when I was trying to get through the dungeons, I really enjoyed drawing the maps of the different rooms, where you could place the bombs, to cross over to other rooms or find different, everything in each dungeon. I kept it all in a notebook. I hand drew all those maps. And it got to the point where when I beat the game finally, which felt like forever, I ended up drawing my own maps because it was fun to draw maps for me for some reason. And so looking back, drawing maps, designing dungeons in a notebook with literally pencil and paper was a precursor to a lot of the things I did as an adult, whether it was modding Warcraft 3 or making maps for Doom 2 and Duke Nukem 3D or making maps for Command and Conquer. Like I had this whole thing of level design that I was doing ever since I was like 7, 8 years old. And it never registered to me until one day I was like sitting there. I'm like, I've been doing this my whole damn life. I've been making all kinds of games on my own. I've been making levels and dungeons and things like that. So NES Legend of Zelda was one of the first moments in my life that never really registered for me until like 20 some years later. And it's like, I've already been doing this forever. No wonder I love doing it. No wonder, I had some kind of sense on what worked and what didn't. It's because not only did I play the games, but I would visualize them and I would draw them out.
I got a task for you. I just did the Lego NES this week, and I need you to design Legend of Zelda for the crank wheel on the NES television.
Probably could.
And mod me a Legend of Zelda Lego crank wheel NES Lego thing. Yeah.
I love that. Actually, I thought about doing that.
It'll mix your superpowers together and
that would definitely, that would stretch your mocking abilities. That's for sure.
Yeah, I thought about mocking some kind of scenes from other classic NES games.
Right.
Maybe I will.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
I loved it. I loved those games, and I played the hell out of that. I played the hell out of Super Mario Brothers 1 and 3 mostly. Did some 2. But yeah, a lot of fond memories of the NES, and I have that same set, and it's one of my favorite sets.
Yeah, I think Mario 3 was probably the first game I could really look back and say this is the game that I loved, that I just obsessed over and everything. I mean, I liked Mario. I liked Mario 2 okay. I didn't love it just because it was so different, and obviously we now know why it was so different. I never really got into the first Zelda game, but I really liked the second one. So, Brendan, if you had to think of a game that like defined your Zelda?
Yeah, it's Zelda.
Yeah, okay.
It's from the very first one, the golden cartridges. Like I had both of the golden cartridges when I was a kid, and yeah, I fell in love with them.
Yeah.
I was young. I was like 4 or 5 when I got my first NES. I couldn't figure them out. It took years to figure them out, but I kept coming back to them. They were ones that I was always drawn to.
Yeah.
And then the Super NES one, the Link to the Past, that's like my all-time favorite game. That, like Castlevania Symphony of the Night, or like probably my like 2, and Super Metroid. Those are like my top 3 games of all time, probably. Probably it mixed in there with like a couple new ones. Elden Ring would probably have to be top 5 all-time favorite video games. But yeah, what about you? What I want to know what the favorite ones you've worked on. What are your favorites that you've worked on?
Well, I really love the game that I'm working on right now, and actually, I would say it's my favorite. It's also the one I've worked the longest on. It's been like over 3 years since I've been started on this project, and we're going to release it very soon, later this year.
On
So
what?
actually, yeah. I think we're primarily targeting mobile, but I mean it is a competitive CCG collectible card game. So looking at PC and all that. So yeah,
Do you think it's so near and dear to you because of your history with that property growing up?
Magic in general.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always been a Magic fan, which is very cool. Not many people can say they've worked on a Magic game, and so that definitely is a large component of it. I think what was really great about it is that it's such a well-known property, right? If you say, "Have you played Magic: The Gathering?" to most playing fans, CCG fans, most of them will say yes, right? It's very recognizable. And so for me, I just really, enjoyed that we got to not just work on a game that's in that universe per se, but there are things throughout how some of the cards work that I had a say in as a designer. I got to, we had to work very closely with Wizards of the Coast, who owns the property. They did a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of the core design of the game, but we did a lot of the, how does this work digitally? How do we, visualize it as a video game? Because they're, a lot of their wheelhouse is in physical paper Magic, right? So we got to be the digital experts and come in and say, here's how it should play. Or this is a really cool card, but what if it did this, right? So we had a wonderful relationship with them and collaborating how to make this game really work and still feel like something that is within the Magic realm, but is something that we can proudly say we got to really influence the end product.
Do you think that this is a game that people that are not familiar with the property could get into, or is it? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Was that an ultimate goal of yours when you set out to?
That was a goal for everyone involved. Was we wanted it to be something, because I think when you do say, "Hey, have you played Magic?" to people who haven't and who are even small, on a small level familiar with it, it's probably a little bit intimidating because it's been around forever,
right?
What we wanted to do was make something more accessible and easier to play and quicker to play, without sacrificing the fun of making a deck or the fun of coming up with cool strategies to go into a game, or seeing all the possibilities of what you're able to do with the cards in your hand. So we built it, from the ground up digitally, trying to lose a lot of the baggage of it being a physical game. So this is its own thing.
Oh, nice. That's awesome. Do you prefer, when you're as you've gone through your career, do you prefer to keep jumping around in game genre, or do you like to dive into one specific type of game genre, and that's what I want to develop for and design for?
I didn't really have much of a choice early on in terms of what we worked on. My first game was like a fighting game, a very little known fighting game. I kid you not, based on the Spike TV show, Deadliest Warrior. We made a video game out of it where it was a 3D fighting game, not unlike kind of like, the 3D battlers that existed.
Virtual Fighter.
Very much like that.
Soul Calibur.
Yep. It had the same. It had the same look. And so that was the first game I got to work on. And so, but after that, I worked on, I kid you not, Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune on the 360. So early on, those are a couple examples. We had to jump genres because I think we were at the time really, just trying to continue to figure out what we wanted to do, but we were also trying to keep the lights on. So we would take, games and licenses for things that were well known, but not necessarily the thing we wanted to make right out the gate. So in terms of my own preference, I found that it to be really valuable to work on all the different genres. I think, spending 3 years in the CCG space has, I guess, kind of gotten me stuck in that world now, I think, in terms of thinking of how I design things. But, I think I still would be cool with learning what other genres have to offer. So, I've done a little bit of everything up until this point.
And that obviously makes sense for somebody like you, because you already have shown that you are not afraid to dive into something that's a little the waters are a little murky, right? You have the courage to dive in. So again, just that's how you got to do with what you're doing now. So diving into a new genre that maybe you haven't dabbled in sounds like a great challenge, and like let's heckin' go. And it's a testament to your type of character. What led you to discovering, Justin TV? Was it, hey, I'm in the video game world? Like how did you end up finding or stumbling across this? Yeah.
Well, part of it is my career, right? Like I was saying, there's some parallels there. As we were working on games, we would pull up streams of games and seeing what other stuff is out there. And I think quite a few people who I even sat around with were getting into Twitch. When I started, I was already watching Justin TV before I started working, and it was a lot different back then. It wasn't solely focused on video games. It was a lot of random stuff, which is kind of funny because now Twitch is kind of going back to that more nowadays. It's more things other than video games. But I really started to get into it when I did start working at Pipeworks, because a lot of us were like StarCraft 2 fans or League of Legends fans, or just wanting to see other things that were the newest game at the time. So having watched a lot of Justin TV before that and being around when it kind of made its way into Twitch, that's kind of right when it ramped up for me. Like when they became Twitch, they also started going really deep into esports. So things like StarCraft 2, things like League of Legends started to take over the channels on that site. And a lot of people that I was working with were like really into both of those games. And so I would walk along in the office and I'd see Twitch pulled up on a couple screens here and there. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. And I'd leave it up while I'd work, or, in between things. Cause sometimes when you do work on a game, you have to wait for it to compile. So you're hanging out for a little bit and you're like, well, I can either go get coffee for 10 minutes or I could see what's on Twitch. Right. And so, or both. And so I ended up watching a lot of Twitch in between things or hearing about it. I was an enthusiast of StarCraft 2. And then a coworker named Randy got me into League of Legends. So I'll admit I was one of those esportsy guys, and I started watching a lot of League of Legends at one point. And so I was watching Twitch regularly, checking out esports. And then from there, you start browsing and you start finding all these other channels. And I started watching a lot of other random streamers playing other games.
What was at what point was I want to try this myself?
Oh man. I think that was kind of built into it, right? Because I was watching a lot of StarCraft and I was watching a lot of the League. I was like, well, everyone else that I'm watching seems cool with it. So I did a couple random streams where it was me and my buddies playing together, and I had a really crappy computer, a really crappy webcam, and like a headset, like an old Logitech headset.
Right.
And I was like, I'll do it. So I don't know if there's even any record of me from back then, but I would say it was around late 2011, early 2012. I started messing around, not on the account that people know me on, but as another account. It no longer exists. Yeah. But I streamed League of Legends and StarCraft like once a month. for like an hour, like a game or two. And it wasn't serious. I didn't know what I was doing. I was probably like a lot of streamers who didn't know how to stream. And the people who would watch me were my coworkers and or friends. And so that went on for a little while. And then eventually, when was it? 2013, I got wind of Extra Life, which is a charity that benefits Children's Miracle Network hospitals all across North America.
Mm-hmm.
And a big thing they were pushing at the time was, hey, you can play video games, do a marathon, and raise money to help a Children's Miracle Network hospital of your choice.
Right.
And so I was like, well, I'm familiar with Twitch. I know how to stream, which was not true at all. And I was like, I'm going to do some fundraising. And so I, in probably one of the worst moves in my history as a streamer, decided to do a 24-hour stream with zero knowledge of how to do a 24-hour stream.
Let's heckin' go. Nice.
And so I picked a hospital that was very near and dear to me. Years before, while I was in college, a dear friend of mine ended up in the hospital. And it was a hospital that happened to be in the city that I'm living in now, even though I was going to college elsewhere. So this dear friend was at this hospital, had a very long stay. They did their best to take care of her. They kind of got to this point where, they were just kind of keeping her as stable as they could. I won't go into details, but she did pass due to an aneurysm. And she was a dear friend. We were very close. It was one of those like friendships where you got like really close to the person really quickly, even though I'd only probably known her for like not even a year. But we were really good friends. I visited her when I could. And I remember them taking at least, as good care of her as they could. And, she always said that she was being watched after, and they were doing okay. And so this hospital was on the list of Extra Life hospitals. And so I was like, I wanted to do something really good. I wanted to do something for a good cause. What better way to honor this memory of this dear friend by raising some money that will benefit not just the same hospital, but like the children's section of this hospital. And so I was like, let's stream for 24 hours playing video games and figure out how to actually really stream. And God, I don't think I raised $100, mostly from dear friends, but I played video games for 24 hours. I learned very quickly how to balance your audio in
trial by fire
in XSplit of all things.
Yikes.
And so, yeah, I didn't know what I was doing. And 24 hours, I felt like hell because I'd never done a 24-hour marathon. I had a lot of friends and family stop by. And I learned very quickly that it was really hard to stream for even more than 4 or 5 hours. And so, I realized, though, that, hey, I saw the potential that I could do something good with my time using a hobby that I enjoy, video games, to do some good. And so it really inspired me, though, actually, even though it was probably one of my worst experiences ever as a streamer, not knowing what I was doing. But I saw the power and the potential of doing something really good. And I've been doing Extra Life ever since. And I've raised over almost $13,000 over the years.
Wow.
It's been like 8 years.
Did you know that? Did you know that hospital was on the list before you accepted the offer to do that as a charity?
It was part of the decision because
it did influence it. Okay.
Yeah. When they said you can raise money for a hospital that's on our list, I went looking at the list and I saw the hospital and I was like, well, yeah, then let's do this. I actually got a medal from Extra Life for raising over $10,000. Like it's their like lifetime 10K medal or coin.
I want to get a closer look.
And so I helped raise around $12,000, almost $13,000 for them individually. And then in the last 4 or 5 years, I've led the Pipeworks team, and we've raised, I want to say, like $30-some thousand as a team collectively over the years, maybe 40.
Do you
I
ever
don't have the numbers?
Do you ever stop and think that this friend is the catalyst, is the reason why that money's now being raised? Does that ever actually hit you? I mean, that it's great that what you're doing for that, but if it hadn't been for this friend and their legacy, it's carried on because you knew them. That's incredible.
Yeah. If somebody wanted to donate to your charity, how would they do that?
On extra-life.org, you can search for MoreAmor, no space. And I set it up every year. So they do it annually, in that you can have the charity page up for the calendar year. And then you can raise all the way up to the end of the year. But they always say, we have a game day. They have a game day where they say, if you want to set some time aside on that game day, and it doesn't even have to be 24 hours, but a lot of people do that. They say, this is game day. This is for you to mark it on your calendar if you need a day to fundraise. But it's open all year. And so, and I sign up every year, and I always sign up for the same hospital. And I always, it's been it'll be year 9, I think, this year. 8 or 9. It should be 9. And so, my friend Jen, it has really inspired me, and actually, continues, I think, to influence what I do. I've done fundraisers for Extra Life every year. I've done St. Jude almost every year for the last 4 or 5 years. I've fundraised for Ukraine, as on the Ukraine raid train, and a number of several other charities. My work actually organized a charity. They're called Queerty Gamers. So in honor of Pride Month, we did a charity stream as a company, and the community folks took it and ran with it. I gave them, my knowledge, and they ran with it. And yeah, it's just, charity work is a big part of what I do. I don't really try to sell myself as a charity streamer, because I just feel like it's a core part of my identity, but it's not really, I think, I don't try to sell myself as that, only because I don't really have a good reason, honestly. I don't know. I like to do good when I can. I don't want to make promises until I'm able to, I think, is probably why I don't call myself purely
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. I'm very impressed by your philanthropy. I hope you continue and keep it up.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Why the heck do streamers always pick 24 hours? What is it about the 24-hour mark? Like, why do we do that to ourselves? Please, for goodness sake, chat. Why do we pick 24 hours? We want to know. Why is that?
I've thought about, because, man, it's getting harder because I'm getting older, man. And
that last one I did about killed me.
Yeah, I've very much thought about, like, when will I call it one of these years? When will it not be a full 24 hours? Will I break it up into 2 12-hour streams over a weekend? I've been toying with that idea. So at some point, it may not be 24 hours, just because I don't want to feel like crap for the rest of the week.
Well, see, I look at it, and go 2 12-hour streams. I'm like, what a cop out, right? Like, what, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I hear that, and I'm like, that's not fair. And I just don't like, because I've been asked that question. Why do you feel the need to do marathon stream for 24 hours, 25 hours, 30 hours, 48 hours, whatever. And my response is always, we as streamers are not on any kind of athletic field. The stream is our athletic field, right? And the one endurance challenge that we can accomplish is sitting on our butt and interacting for over a day straight. Yeah. Like that's the one thing that we have the ability to do. But my goodness,
I salute both of you guys. I the longest I've hung out with Zach is maybe 3 hours. Yeah. On one of your 24-hour live streams, and I was like, "That's enough. I'm out. I can't take more than a few hours." Oh yeah, both of you guys, you're doing 24-hour things. I salute you.
I mean, I honestly, Zach, you make such a good, like, why are we doing this? I mean, people love spectacle. People love to see crazy things on, and on a landscape like Twitch with millions and millions of people live at any given time. I think it's really just, nothing draws in an audience like saying, "Hey, I'm gonna
torture myself for 24 hours." They love, man.
Stupid.
These. I'm looking at you, chat. You guys love to see us streamers just put ourselves through hell, whether it be eating the bean boozles or eating hot sauce or whatever. Amor had to do the hot chip challenge or something like that. But was like had like rubber gloves on because he didn't want to.
No way. No way.
No, I don't know anymore. I don't know why. What's crazy is I think I've done like 10 different 24-hour streams. I mean, I've done 8 of my own, and then I've helped with 2 other ones. And so it's like, you'd think I learned. The only thing I learned is how to do it with the least amount of impact on my ability to function the next couple days. But it's still bad. It's still not good for you. No. Would I recommend it? I never do.
No.
I never tell people to do it. But then when the time comes, I'm like, hey, tune in for my 24-hour stream. I might eat hot chips or bean boozles.
It's a freaking drug. It is a drug. With the idea of it that, and this goes back to being a streamer, the idea of it that you can entertain people, the idea that you are entertaining one person, 2 people, 3 people by torturing yourself literally gets you jacked, and you're willing to do it. It's insane. You get caught up in it, and next thing you know, you're promising that you're going to be wearing your underwear on your head in the next stream. Like, it's just, or TikTok leggings or whatever. Like, it's just.
So what was this Bagonka Donk Boozle thing you're talking about? I don't know what this is. I don't know what you're talking about.
The Bean Boozle?
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
You and I actually. So you and I, and actually your brother, we all actually did the Bean Boozle thing years ago before it was called Bean Boozle. Oh. It was, remember those Harry Potter every flavored beans?
Gotcha.
The 3 of us sat around my apartment. Had beers in our hands because we knew the taste needed to be washed down with something even more bitter than whatever it was we were going to eat, and tried we had 3 boxes, and we tried every single one of those beans in that box in one sitting. Wow. And it was disgusting.
Oh, dude.
So gross. To the point where I won't do it ever again. I watch people like Ace do it and things like that. I'm like, nope. Nope, absolutely. But now it's a thing. So you can literally buy a Bean Boozled kit that's like a little plastic whatever, and they have those jelly bean things in there, and you just push it down and it pops it up, and you don't know what you're getting. You're either getting puke or you're getting
earwax.
Well, not earwax, but like whatever the different colors. It's always one good and one bad. Frankly, it's a jelly beans, so it's all bad, but whatever.
And they weight it such that it's like 80-90% bad. And so I ate, like, how they have the big rectangular boxes of them?
Mm-hmm.
I ate a whole one of those in a 24-hour stream. The whole thing.
I have an unopened box of Harry Potter Birdie Bots every flavored beans sitting here in my drawer, for the day that I get so caught up in whatever shenanigans are going on that I will throw out some ridiculous number for a charity stream or whatever and be like, you know, if y'all drop, you know, $2,000 for this charity, I'll eat this entire box, you know, whatever. Right.
Yeah.
It's going to probably sit there as unopened because it's going to take a lot.
Dude, I was burping. I was like, I could just taste it.
No.
Like the whole, like near the end of that marathon stream. And that was the year. I was like, never again. Never again.
10K dono right now and Zach snorts them. Exactly. See, like, yeah, you could probably get me to do it. No. Like it would be stupid. So after that first 24-hour charity stream, is that when all of a sudden you were hooked and you were like, this, I want to do this. I want to sit down on a weekly basis, not necessarily from a charity standpoint, but from a streaming standpoint. That's kind of what said, this is what I want to do.
That was it. I mean, for me, I saw just how fun it was to talk to people, you know, randomly who would show up, seeing what I'm doing, engaging just other people who had interest in video games, right? And it was after that 24-hour stream, because even though it was mostly friends and family, you know, I walked away with the feeling of, okay, I did something really cool for a hospital that means something to me. I did something really, really great. And that potential to do good kind of spurred me just to think about streaming in general. And then I thought back to the other experiences throughout the day when I was running into people that weren't friends or family. I was like, oh, you could just like meet people or hear random thoughts from other people who are watching you play a video game. It's not unlike when I was in college, right? And I was, you know, I've been a gamer all my life. In college, some of my best friends and they would come to my dorm room and we'd BS in front of the TV while I played a video game. It felt just like that, you know, when it was like a random night during the week and my buddies and I would hang out and play video games. It just felt kind of like that. And so it brought me back to that moment, well, you know, as an adult who has a family and a job, that you don't really get that kind of experience all that often anymore. You have to go out of your way to get it. And Twitch kind of spurred that feeling of, I can just hang back, relax, and get to know other people who might have a love for games like I do. And that's really what got me into it. And I started doing it weekly after that.
When did you start seeing the friends and family start falling off of the community versus new people, strangers coming in and coming back? When did you really start seeing that kind of shift happen in your community?
So, although I did it regularly, there would be maybe a month where I wouldn't do it, right? I'd get super busy with work or with family, and I'd take a week off or a month off, and then I'd come back. So it was very inconsistent. But, you know, friends and family would swing by for the first couple of months of it, and a couple of them remained through that. And it was probably around, I want to say a year to 2 years later of just doing it on and off with no real commitment, that I discovered a really dumb game. Actually, I take that back. It's not a dumb game because I love it. I have like a lot of hours in it. It's a colony management game called Oxygen Not Included. And by one of my favorite developers, Klei, the KLEI. And you have these cartoony, cute little colonists bopping around the screen, and you're managing a colony on an asteroid. And you have to dig out the asteroid, and you get materials to start building things. And it's called Oxygen Not Included because they have no real oxygen. There's like a certain amount that you start out with, and you have to literally build the machinery that will generate oxygen. But then you have to build a machinery that makes food. And so you're managing this colony. I got obsessed with this indie game like a couple years later after I started streaming. It got to the point where I was playing it every day for like 3 hours a night. And I figured if I was going to be playing it every day, that I'd be streaming it. So I literally streamed for, I want to say, 18 months almost straight. There was very few nights I took off.
Mm.
And it was during that period of time where I built a community of like the 3.4K followers that I have on Twitch. I earned about 1.5 of those like in that time.
Oh, wow.
And I was sitting at a concurrent viewership of about 40 to 50 just on the back of this one game. And that is when I kind of started to get that like community feeling, per your question, where
Sure.
I started building this community around folks who love this game that I somehow played for like 1,500 hours on Twitch.
Wow.
And that is really what the channel was built upon at the time.
Mm. When did that change?
Like when I got out of it?
Yeah.
Gosh. There was a moment where I hit this, I wouldn't say it was a wall, because I was still growing. Like week over week, month over month, the concurrent, like that was when I thought I could even be a partner. Like it was creeping up towards partner territory. But I think we're all our own worst critics at times. And so after doing this for a year and like 5-ish months, I was like, I don't know if there's much more to this for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was such a small community for this one game that I felt like it was not unlike the Lego community, except for the Lego community is larger, but it felt very similar where everyone knew all the streamers in that space. Everyone knew who all the streamers were in the Oxygen Not Included space. Everyone knew who were like the top 5 to 10 people who did it. I was in there in that mix, whether some months I was in the top 3, some months I was not so much, but still in there. There was a point where I was like, is this still interesting to people?
Right.
It's still interesting to me.
Right.
But I realized, like the life of a game, if it's not like getting new content every month or two, it's not going to feel fresh.
Right.
And I got to that point where I was like, man, I don't know if I can sustain being an interesting person playing this
Sorry,
game.
the way you said that was...
No, it's so true. 100%. Like, and if you are anywhere in my streams, you know that I have massive imposter syndrome. And it's only aggravated because I work as a creative in the games industry.
Sure.
Where you feel like if your ideas suck, that you're not good at your job, or you're just the crap person, right? And so bring that into streaming, where tons of streamers feel that all the time. So I get like the double whammy of that, in a hobby that I love and in the career that I love. And so at the time, I was like, man, is this it for me? Have I peaked? Am I good? Do people care? Right? And when you become a single game streamer, which many will tell you, if you even change the game that you play or you do something out of the ordinary, it's almost like a house of cards, right? Like it could easily collapse.
I see it every day. I see it every single day on this platform.
Right. And that was my thing, was because it was so focused on the game. Like, obviously people enjoyed me playing the game. Obviously people came back because of me, which is the thing. That's like the thing about being a Twitch streamer, is people may come in for the content that you're working on, but they'll come back because they liked what you did with it. Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I know people come back because I'm entertaining, in that I have fun playing this game, but can I truly sustain this for this long?
Mm.
And it really made me go, I don't have a plan. I don't know what I'm doing. And this is what, this is where I kind of lost sight of it, right? Because it started off as this mission to continue to do good things, do charity work, which I was still doing. I was still doing all of that. But the day to day got lost in the, is this worth, I was my own worst critic. Is this worth watching?
You
Do
were
people
still
enjoy
seeing growth though. So this was all this is all internalized, right? This is all in your brain questioning your validity here on the platform. And you were still
brain
seeing,
is a funny thing.
Oh my God.
Yeah. The brain is a funny thing because by the time I stopped streaming it regularly, I think I was like 50s concurrent viewership. Starting with like literally like 3 or 4, right?
There are people that have been doing this for 5 years that don't sniff those numbers.
Right? Exactly. And I got in my own head, right? Because when you start to see growth, you start to really question how it's going.
Mm-hmm.
Like you may ride the wave, but there's a point where you're like, how can I continue to sustain this growth? Right? You kind of get that hit of dopamine where you're like, oh my God, I just came off a stream where I got like I would have streams where I would get 50 follows a night.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so when you start to see those numbers drop, you get in your own head. And I started to get in my own head about the whole thing. And so I got to the point where I started trying to introduce other games a little bit. And that made it tough because then you lose a lot of your viewership doing that when you've built it on one game.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I got to that point where I was like, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I don't know what I'm doing. I was like, you know what? Maybe we need to reset. Maybe we need to focus on charity streams when they make sense. And so I actually took a mega long hiatus from Twitch, even though I was doing fine. I left Twitch. I posted an announcement in my Discord. I said, hey guys, thank you so much for supporting this community. I will still be here on Discord, but I need some time away. I took like a 9-month hiatus from Twitch.
Were you a 9-month hiatus from streaming or just from even participating in chats and things like that and bopping around?
Mostly streaming. I would peek in on friends here and there. But I basically took that time and I said, I need to look at my mental health because obviously there's something wrong with me if I think I'm crap at this thing where I was doing okay. Right. Like people were telling me, they were like, you're fine, dude. Don't even worry about, stop stressing. And it got to that point where I was like, I need to get back to why I do this. And I need to get back to feeling good about myself as like a person. Cause I started to question validity of everything, right? Started to bleed into like my work. And so I needed to get my head right. So I walked away.
I'll tell you what, this conversation has gone on so long, but I don't want it to end. So what do you say, guys? We actually stick around and do and do some more of this. So let's go ahead and end this part of the conversation here, and then we'll continue this conversation next week. Does that work for you guys?
Yeah, I don't want it to end.
I don't want it to end. It feels so good.
I know.
It feels too good. It feels too good. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and get out of here for now, but make sure you tune in next week for the continuation and completion of this fantastic conversation with MoreAmor. See you guys next week.